Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I brought the meditation books with me today. These meditations have been so good the last couple videos. I've really had a good time reading these. They've been really helpful to me, so thank you guys for watching the videos and hanging out with me over here. Before I get in this video today, I want to address a comment that I got on one of my past videos. I have it pulled up right here. This is from my video called Own Your Truth and Know Your Worth. And in that video, I was talking about, well, part of what I talked about was all different things, but one of the things I talked about in there was having been bullied when I was growing up as a kid, which is a theme that I've talked about consistently in a lot of my videos and a lot of my channels through the years. And how those were like my foundation years of growing up, and that what that was really teaching me wasn't just about being bullied, but the message that it was sending in my head was, you're not worthy, you're not lovable, you're not good enough, you don't deserve to have people that care about you, on and on and on. And that was something that I carried over into my adulthood. And I think it's interesting when, through the years that I've talked about bullying, I either have like people that completely like relate to it and they're like, oh my God, I went through the exact same thing, I understand what you're going through. Or I have people that will say like, I'm really sorry for what you went through. I don't experience that, but I'm sorry that happened to you. Or I'll have people that say, that happened 45 years ago, get over it. And I was saying in that video, I think it was that video that I was saying that it's interesting that things that happen to us in our childhood, if you're anybody that's a parent or an educator or grandparent, or that you work with, kids and, education or schools or whatever. I mean, one of the things that we talk about in our world is foundation years, and that this idea that the mind is not fully evolved until you're, in your 20s, and the brain is not fully evolved and all that kind of stuff. But then we tell people that went through stuff in their childhood to just get over it. Like, it's been long enough. Like, that there is a time limit on somebody's pain and suffering. Or there's a time limit on how long you can be affected by something that has happened to you in your childhood. Now, I will tell you, I was bullied. That was my experience. And also going home to, and this is a big part of it. And I think when I talk about the bullying, I think the two are connected indirectly. But having grown up with an alcoholic mother, and no, she didn't drink every single day, but I never knew what I was coming home to. So I didn't know if I was going to come home to Little House on the Prairie on TV, my mom having made like some home-cooked meal, us playing a game, and her being the perfect mother, okay? I didn't know if I was coming home to that, or if I was coming home to my mother with headphones on, listening to sad music like Judy Collins in the living room with the doors closed, and she'd been drinking since 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because unbeknownst to me, she and my dad had some argument on the phone that I was fully unaware of, and then she was just absent for the evening, So I never knew what I was coming home to. And so my home was my safe place. And so when I'm being bullied at school every single day, and you're talking about, go and look right now, okay, at a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old. I mean, sometimes, like, as my nephews have gotten older, and I'm like, they're the age that I was being called horrific names, that I was being pushed and shoved, and I was being, people were saying horrible things to me, and I look, and they're just like these innocent children, and I was having these horrible things said to me, right? And then I was going home to my safe place. That was my home, except for that sometimes it wasn't a safe place for me. And the lack of safety came in. I didn't know what I was going home to. Years later when my mom and I talked about it, and, she talked to me about her drinking, and she felt so bad about it. My mom got sober 6 months after I did, and that was like, that's why I say to people, don't ever give up hope that your, parent or whatever won't get sober. I brought the meditation books, but maybe I'll just end up talking about this. I don't know. But anyway, my mom and I, when we talked about it later, and I've heard a lot of people actually in the rooms of recovery talk about this, she said to me, I'm so sorry about the drinking, I'm so sorry about this. I said, Mom, one of the things is that it was the fear. I didn't know what I was walking into. I didn't know, it was like when I talked to my dad about my drinking like years later, when after he had read the book, Beautiful Boy by David Sheff, and I said to him, was that what it was like? And he goes, that was exactly what it was like. I can remember getting arrested, and my dad said, I know for one night you're at least safe, That pissed me off so bad. But my dad, like every night that he didn't know, much of my using was before cell phones. So he had no clue where I was. He didn't know, until he would hear, the door open at 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning. He had no idea where I was. He was terrified that every night that he'd get a call that I was dead. Sometimes that fear we inflict on people with our using is enough. And so I said to my mom, I said, it wasn't always just about the drinking. Like, yeah, the drinking was bad, but in all reality and looking back, I knew how to handle my mother drinking, My mother was not a violent alcoholic. She wasn't, she didn't say hurtful words to me with her drinking. She just kind of would, isolate, and then she would go. I mean, there was a few moments where she wasn't to me, but, I can remember her breaking a toilet seat one time because she was so upset with the conversation she had with my dad on the phone and stuff like that. But other than that, she just kind of would pass out in bed. But as a little kid, that scared me. This is where when we talk about, kids don't understand stuff, kids understand a lot more than you give them credit for. I can tell you right now, I understood at 5, 6, 7, and 8 that my mother was a full-blown alcoholic. I understood that whatever she was drinking caused her to pass out in bed, and that I was on my own for the rest of the night to put myself to bed on the nights that it happened. I knew that about my mom. And so I didn't know the words to use. I don't know that I knew the word alcoholic. I don't know that I even knew the words. I just knew that when my mom drank, that's what happened. And it didn't always happen. I mean, there were weeks that went by that my mom, she was more of a binge drinker. So there were weeks that would go by where my mom was the perfect mom. But that was part of the fear, was that I never knew what I was walking home to. And I can't say that there weren't days that were horrible at school, that when I came home, they weren't horrible at home too. So I really didn't have a safe place, even though home was supposed to be my safe place. I can remember, in junior high, kids being mean and stuff like that, and me just running, because I took the bus in junior high, me just running down the street. I couldn't wait to get home. I can remember that in elementary school because I was a walker, Once I hit the corner of our street, just running home because I couldn't wait to get home. And sometimes my mom would be like, honey, what's going on? How's your, and then other days, she would just have her headphones on in the library, because we had this library, and she'd just be sitting there listening to music, and just crying and drinking and smoking cigarettes. I never knew what I was walking into, So when people tell people, just get over it, it's been long enough, the problem with that statement is that I think many of us attempt to do that, because we have so many people that tell us, just get over it. It's been long enough. You're still talking about being bullied and you're 52 years old, right? Trust me, I don't want to talk about being bullied at 52 years old, okay? One of the reasons why I do it is to educate other people. A lot of times when I'm not talking about it on camera, I don't think about it at all. But one of the reasons why I do it is to educate other people. But the thing is about that is, it's the way that I view the world, I view the world from a place of, what I did for a long time, and still, I started doing some heavy work in 12-step, with 12-step work, and I started doing some heavy work in therapy and stuff like that. I viewed the world through a point of fear. I viewed the world from not knowing what was going to happen next with bullying to not knowing what I was going home to. I was constantly, as a kid, looking at the world as fear, And in recovery, we talk about that our disease is founded on 100 forms of fear. Does it surprise you that I was probably already genetically an alcoholic and an addict, and then I ended up becoming an alcoholic and an addict? I already had the genetic piece to it, And then on top of that, I had 100 forms of fear. And drinking and drugging took that away from me, But I think that we live in this world where we want to, talk about all this stuff and how serious it is, and can you believe that this person went through this and went through that? But then we also want to tell them that they have a time limit on when to get over it. I'll probably, for the rest of my life, deal with the fact of the stuff that happened to me, because it was repetitive. It was over and over and over again, It's like if you told somebody that was, I'm just making up something, but if you told somebody to always walk with pushing the right foot forward, okay, every single day from kindergarten through their senior year in high school, and then the day they got out of high school, you told them, now start walking with your left foot, or just walk however you want. They're so prone to walking with their right foot forward. I'm totally making this up, but they're gonna do that through the rest of their life. They're so prone to doing that because for 12 years they've been told to walk with their right foot first. Okay, so they're gonna do that. Even when they try not to, they're probably gonna fall into that, and that's very similar to what happened to me, And so that is what I've gone through for the majority of my life. I still have that tape in my head. As much as I've rewritten that tape and I've worked through that, there are instances in my life that happen to me, I would say on a pretty regular basis, where I question my self-worth and I question my love and my self-love or my ability to be loved and my value in this world. I question that a lot, And I got this comment from, hold on a second. I got this comment from Delilah. And she said on here, on this video, she said, isn't it ironic how you were told those things in your younger years, that I was not worthy, not lovable, called names, on and on. Isn't it ironic how you were told those things in your younger years, and now you have a whole community who loves you dearly? Happy Tuesday, Peter. I've been having a hard time recently at work, but you keep me company, and I appreciate you. Thank you. So to Delilah, I want to say, I hope that things are getting better for you at work. And I'm sending a lot of love and prayer to you. This comment, I mean, I get a lot of comments like this, but this comment on the moment that I read it was so specifically what I needed, because it completely changed my perspective of this idea that I focus a lot, you know, in my dark times and in bad times, I focus a lot on all the things that have happened to me. I think as, you know, somebody that has, you know, PTSD, as my past therapist said, as a result of all this kind of stuff, that, and as an, you know, I talked about this in my video yesterday, I think, as an addict and an alcoholic who looks at the glass as half empty much of the time, I'm prone to look at a negative perspective of how things will happen. It's like this one, you know, I look at these inspirational quotes on Instagram. This one inspirational quote keeps on coming up in different formats on different people's things on my Instagram. People I don't even follow. It just comes up as suggested. And it keeps on coming up. And something to the extent of, like, I'm sure some of you out there have seen it. Like, what if everything turns out exactly how it's supposed to be, and that it's beautiful, or something like that. And, you know, that's not the way that I think about things. I don't think about the world like, what if everything turns out exactly how it's supposed to be, and that's a beautiful thing, right? Like, what if it's that everything, not supposed to be, but what if everything turns out in a beautiful way? Like, that's not the way that my mind is prone to think. My perspective is prepare for the worst, and you're blessed and lucky if the best happens. Do you know what I mean? Or if near the best happens. But I'm always the prepare for the worst kind of person. So when I got this comment from Delilah, and she was like, look at those things that you were told in your childhood, but then you have all these people that watch your videos and really care about you and are so kind to you and love you. It completely, and I already knew that. You know, I say in my videos a lot, I'm so grateful for all the people that watch my videos and the ability to do this every day. I'm really super, I mean, it's not something that is missed on me every day. And reading the comment, it wasn't missed into me in that moment. But the way that she said it changed my perspective. Sometimes the way that people say things, have you ever heard something like 100 times, but then one person says it to you kind of different? The fact that she said, isn't it ironic that you were told all of these things to not believe in yourself, to not love yourself, to not think that you were worthy of love, or that you were worthy of care, or that people wouldn't think you were a good person. And look at all these years later, right? That there's a lot of people out there that really do like you. That proves the opposite to be true. And I thought, what are all the, and I'm so thankful for that, Delilah, thank you. And I'm like, what are all the other belief systems that I have in my head that the opposite can be true to that as well? You know, I have worked very, very hard to rewrite this tape in my head to tell myself that I'm unworthy, that I'm a piece of crap, that I don't matter. I've worked really hard, and I think I've done a pretty good job, but it still comes into my head every once in a while, right? And so I'm like, what do I need to do to continue to work on that? What are the other negative ideas that I have that the opposite could be completely true, you know? That maybe somebody else's perspective, you know, that aha moment when somebody looks at you and says something, you go, I never thought of it that way before. I never thought of it that way before. You know, I was just talking about this the other day in one of my videos. I never thought of it that way before. You know, I mean, I did think about this, but not exactly in those words. I think for me, the lesson is, and I've talked about this a lot, I love perspective. I love the difference of perspective and looking at things from a different point of view, you know? I talk a lot about all the stuff that I went through in my childhood, and it was horrible, but it wasn't anywhere near as horrible as like a million people out there that had it a million times worse than I ever did. And that's one of the pieces of perspective that I used to move past it, you know? That even in the midst of all of my misery growing up, there were times that I had a very charmed childhood, a very charmed youth, you know? That I was very blessed for what I had when I was growing up, and the parents that I had, you know? Even in my mom in her darkest days, I'm grateful that I had the mom that I had. She taught me valuable lessons about humanity, about society, about growth, about change, about literature, about movies, about music, you know? I'm grateful that I had the mom that I had. I would never in a million years trade in my mom, you know? In all honesty, even if she had never got sober, I wouldn't have traded her in, you know? But I think it's all about different perspective and looking things in a different way. I remember when I was actually just saying this to somebody the other day, you know, I think, like, when somebody angers you, like, this is a change, hold on, let me pull it up really quick. It's the prayer for the sick alcoholic. Prayer for, I think it's the sick man. Prayer for the sick man. My sponsor told me to read this years ago, and it completely changed my perspective on everything. You talk about changing your perspective on how you look at things. And this is a good example of that, right? I can remember I was upset with somebody and they were very toxic in my life. And my sponsor suggested that I read this. And it was, God, when a person offends me, help me to remember this is a sick person. Help me show the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. Show me how I can help them. Save me from being angry. Thy will be done. And when I, read that the first time, it was like, whew, that whenever I encounter somebody that makes me angry or frustrates me or seems miserable or whatever, that if I look at that person as I would a sick friend, that they can't help the fact that they have a cold, or, what would I do in that moment to a sick friend of mine? Would I call them up and check on them? I mean, I'm maybe not going to, call up somebody that dislikes me and check on them, but can I grant them the same mercy and tolerance that I would? Can I be civil with my words? Do I have to be nasty about it? It offered me a completely different perspective. It made me start looking at people as individual people with their individual stories and their individual hurt and pain, instead of just grouping people together. I think each of us have individual stories that got us where we are. I think when we make broad generalizations about who somebody is or where they are without knowing their history of what got them there, I think that we're making assumptions based on our truth, not theirs, That doesn't mean that I give exceptions to people that are cruel to other people out there or cruel to me. I don't today. I set boundaries. It's one of the things I had to learn. I don't allow toxicity in my life today, But it offered me a different perspective. It offered me a perspective that maybe this person's acting in a certain way because they're a sick person, Yeah, they can get the help and they can do that, but maybe I need to grant them the same tolerance I would grant a sick friend. Maybe I don't have to get angry and make it about me, Maybe it's really none of it is about me at all. Maybe it's about them, and it changed my perspective. Just like reading her comment changed my perspective when I read it, So thank you, Delilah, for that. I really appreciate it. I think there's always an opposite to how we look at things. If there's something in your life right now that you're looking at from a very negative point of view, maybe turn it and look at it from a very positive point of view. I've always believed that the things that happened to me in my youth made me who I am today. I'm not necessarily, I have friends of mine that say that they're grateful recovering, alcoholics and addicts. I'm not necessarily, some of the most horrific stuff that I've never even talked about on video, I don't know that I can necessarily be grateful for that exact event. But I am grateful that from that event, I learned to be a different person today, and that I'm a stronger person. I wish I hadn't had to go through those things, but having gone through that and what I did with it on the other side, when faced with the opportunity, like my sponsor says, this is an opportunity for change and growth. Are you going to take it? That I did at that time. Sometimes not in that moment, but later, I did. It's always about looking at things from a different perspective, Isn't it crazy that all those people years ago told me how miserable I was, or how unlovable I was, and yes, how miserable I was, and that I was miserable to be around. They didn't want me. They didn't love me. I was all these horrible words they used, all these derogatory words they used towards me, and in retrospect, talking about, and then here she is, Delilah's like, isn't it crazy that all these years later you have, these people out there that love you? And it's so cool, And maybe in retrospect, in pulling those two together, the different perspective of looking at the prayer for the sick man, I don't know what was going on with those kids' lives at the time. I don't know. I talked to one of my bullies years later, and he said to me, you don't know what my life was like at that time, And so for me to get some attention at school for being kind of the court jester was my way of getting out of my misery that I was living at home. I don't know what was going on with those little kids. I don't know if it was just attention. They wanted to laugh. I don't know if maybe their home lives were miserable. I don't know, And I don't need to know today. And I don't need to make excuses for them, But all I'm saying is maybe it was really never about me to begin with. And I bought into the lie. Don't ever buy into the lie. You're worth more than you'll ever know. Anyway, thank you for that. I love you guys. I'll get back to the meditations tomorrow. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.